Okay, everyone, I think we might get started. Good morning for those joining from Austria and Europe, and good evening to those joining from Australia. And welcome to today's webinar that we're exploring the latest developments in the Australian healthcare sector. We appreciate your time here today and interest in exploring the opportunities that Australia has to offer for this dynamic and growing market, which is healthcare. My name is Luke Brewer, and together with our amazing panelists, including Catherine Martin, Investment Advisor from the Australian Trade and Investment Commission, which is also known as Austrade, Alison Choi Flanagan, Partner from Hall & Wilcott, and Vicky Abraham, Managing Partner from Abraham OT Services. We'll be guiding you through the key updates, trends, regulatory advice, and opportunities relevant to your ventures here in the Australian market. Before we kick off today's session, I would encourage all guests and all participants who have joined us to interact with us. At the top of your screens, there's a Q&A function. Please use that function to ask any of our panelists a question. We'll have a short Q&A session at the end of our presentations today, and our panelists will be more than happy to answer any of your questions. I would also encourage you to use the chat function, and we'd like to know more about you, the companies you come from, if you've worked in Australia before, or the opportunities that Australia has to offer. We want to hear from you. We want to hear how we can assist you as well. Australia's healthcare system is a well-developed and robust sector backed by strong government support, cutting-edge research, and an increased focus on innovation and digital transformation. With a population of over 26 million people and a universal healthcare system known as Medicare, Australia presents numerous opportunities for international collaboration, investment, and market entry. Some of the key trends in these areas include digital health and telemedicine. After the pandemic, we saw a huge government investment in this area, medical technology and innovation, pharmaceuticals and biotech, and aged care and healthcare infrastructure. Austrian companies, we're all well aware of, offer many advantages in the healthcare sector and specialize in digital health, medical devices, pharmaceuticals, and aged care solutions. And I'm just touching on what great things Austria does in this sector. And there's some significant opportunities to collaborate with Australian partners. I'm not going to talk too much more about what Australia and Austria have to offer, and I might just kick in straight to our panelists. Our first panelist today is Catherine Martin. She's currently a senior investment advisor at Austrade, which is the Australian Trade and Investment Commission, where she focuses on attracting and facilitating investment across health and other critical technologies from Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And she's supporting businesses navigate the Australian healthcare sector. Catherine, I'll leave the floor to you.
Thank you, Luke. All right, just give me a second to share my screen. Are we able to view the slides?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you everyone for your attendance today. So I'm really here to talk about why you should consider Australia for life science and a bit about the opportunities within the healthcare ecosystem. So as Luke alluded to, so Austrade is the Australian government's trade and investment, international trade promotion and investment attraction agency. Our role is to deliver quality trade and investment services to businesses to grow Australia's prosperity. So to international businesses, we offer support, connections and advice with the aid of our international network and relationships across government and industry. So for those interested in opportunities in Australia's healthcare sector, Austrade's investment services are free of charge and are focused on attracting productive foreign direct investment opportunities of strategic importance to Australia's economy, for which the health sector is vitally important. So just a little bit about the Australian healthcare sector. So Australia is a public-private funded system, with the universal public healthcare system scheme being Medicare, which provides either free of charge or heavily subsidised medical services. And then the public sector also funds medicines through the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme, known as the PBS, or medical devices through the prosthesis list. For Australia's size, its exceptionally well-funded medical research sector is open to global collaboration. Australia is also home to many top-ranking universities and medical precincts, which have fostered a pro-innovation medical environment that welcomes startups and global collaboration. So over the past few years, clinical trial activity in Australia is currently surging as international companies take advantage of local expertise, fast-track clinical trials, and receive globally recognised clinical data. So Australia's medical research infrastructure and world-class healthcare ecosystem includes a network of universities, medical research institutes, public and private clinical research sites, biobanks, and contract research organisations staffed by world-leading scientists and other allied healthcare professionals. Here you can access over 40 universities focused on clinical research, more than 50 clinical trial networks, and 50 CROs of global standing. So to make the most of global collaboration and knowledge transfer, we have well-established innovation precincts right across Australia, connecting hospitals, universities, research institutes, and industry partners. So just to highlight a couple, so where I'm based in Melbourne here today, we have the Melbourne Biomedical Precinct, and this has a medical research focus with strengths in infectious diseases, neuroscience, mental health, cancer, child health, and healthy ageing. This area is home to approximately 40 hospitals, major industry partners including CSL, Melbourne University, major health research institutes including the Peter Doherty, Bio21 and Peter MacCallum Cancer Centre, and many more. You can also see up in Queensland, we've got the Hurston Health Precincts, which is based in Queensland and has got a major focus in digital health and health services. The area is home to the Australian eHealth Research Centre, as well as the University of Queensland, the Hurston Imaging Research Facility, Hurston Biofabrication Institute, and many more. So in terms of the private sector here in Australia, we have close to 1,300 medical, technology and pharmaceutical companies. These companies are primarily focused in developing therapeutic and devices across oncology, immunology, neurology, cardiology, aging and neurodegeneration. The private sector has grown approximately 40% since about 2021, and the market capitalisation has reached approximately 250 billion Australian dollars. So this rapid growth has been driven by an entrepreneurial culture, open market and strong collaborative networks. So as you can see here, the majority of companies are based in New South Wales and Victoria. Recently, we've seen Queensland emerging and developing quite a few strengths, but we also have smaller pockets across WA and South Australia. So in terms of government supports and incentives, we provide generous funds across the life science value chain from research to clinical trials and manufacturing. So for example, we have the Medical Research Future Fund, which provides $1 billion annually to support health and medical research and innovation. We have the National Reconstruction Fund, which invests $15 billion to increase manufacturing capability in Australia. Of this, $1.5 billion has been earmarked for medical manufacturing, and this is through co-investment with the Australian government via debt or equity support or guarantees. We also have the Clinical Trials Activity Initiative, which helps Australian researchers and patients test new treatments through national and international clinical trials. And there's also the Biomedical Translation Fund, which allows foreign investment partners to co-invest in emerging Australian biomedical companies with licensed Australian venture capital firms, just to name a few. So Australia also offers international companies generous tax incentives for companies looking to innovate or conduct clinical trials here in Australia. The Research Development Tax Incentives, commonly known as the RDTI, provides either an offset or a tax refund of up to 43.5% for eligible R&D expenditure. So for those here today, if you're thinking about Australia as a destination for clinical trials, costs that you're able to claim under this include direct R&D costs such as consumables, payment to contractors and salaries. It's also noteworthy under very certain circumstances, R&D activities conducted overseas may also be claimed under this scheme. In terms of our regulatory environment, our primary regulatory agency is the Therapeutics Goods Administration, also known as the TGA. So the TGA regulatory framework is very closely aligned with comparable international jurisdictions such as the EMA and the FDA. So under comparable overseas regulatory report based under this process is particularly noteworthy as it can allow for fast track review of registered applications for a product that has received regulatory approval in comparable regions. So for example, if you've received regulatory approval by the FDA, then you may receive accelerated approval under the TGA. So it's in terms of intellectual property protection, according to the International Property Rights Index, Australia ranks 10th globally and 3rd across the Asia Pacific region for intellectual property rights, and it offers a 20-year patent protection with 5 years data exclusivity period. So in terms of opportunities for Australian companies, so to highlight some of Australia's competitive strengths and investment opportunities, the Australian government has curated a list of critical technologies deemed vital to Australia's national interests. One of the streams identified this includes the biotechnology, gene technology and vaccines. So this was identified as a major area of critical technology for Australia. And then some supporting sectors that are complementary to the healthcare industry include AI, computing and communications. We've got advanced materials manufacturing and quantum-based technologies. So these areas exemplify where Australia's global competitive edge and have attracted significant investment in recent years. And then as for emerging opportunities, the life science industry in Australia is currently witnessing transformative growth and innovation in several key areas. Just to name a few, I'd say nucleic acid therapeutics, antimicrobial resistance research, regenerative medicine, diagnostics, and radiopharmaceuticals. So across Australia, there are more than 30 incubators and accelerators that help to grow small and medium-sized pharmaceutical and medical technology companies. For example, we have the MedTech Actuator, which is Australia's national MedTech accelerator, Cicada Innovations, which is an incubator for deep technology startups. We have the Arm Hub Biomedical AI Sprints Accelerator, designed to develop industry expertise in the biomedical sector relating to big data and artificial intelligence. There's also a number of Australian government programs designed to assist businesses and startups, especially in the area of translational medical research. For example, we have the Global Innovation and Linkages Program, which provides businesses and researchers with match funding up to $1 million to collaborate with global partners on strategically focused leading edge research and development. We're also home to a number of world-renowned research institutes, including CSIRO, which is Australia's national research agency. We have the Australian National Fabrication Facility, the Murdoch Children's Research Institute and Peter MacCallum Cancer Centre, to name a few, that frequently collaborate and develop partnerships with international investors. So as alluded to before, every year approximately 2,000 clinical trials commence here in Australia, representing about 5% of the global industry-sponsored clinical trials. This has seen particularly strong growth over the last decade, with the number of phase 1 clinical trials growing at approximately 9.5% per annum and phase 2 growing at approximately 6% per annum. This reflects Australia's increasing reputation as an attractive destination for early phase trials. It's also hence why approximately 2/3 of all trials in 2022 were the result of inward investment attraction from international jurisdictions. Of these trials, approximately 9% of industry-sponsored trials are related to medical devices, and the remaining 91% are related to drug and therapeutic trials. So the reason Australia is a top-tier destination for international clinical trials activity is because you can benefit from quality data, speed to start, and cost-effective incentives in place. So Australia has been long recognised as a quality destination for clinical trials activity, as the data is accepted in key jurisdictions such as the US FDA and the European Medicines agencies. In terms of speed, Australia offers companies a fast and pragmatic regulatory pathway for clinical trials. Under the Clinical Trials Notification Scheme administered by the TGA, research proposals are submitted directly to the Human Research Ethics Committees, which assume primary responsibility for reviewing the ethical and scientific information relating to a study. This process only typically takes 4 to 8 weeks, and then after receiving this approval, sponsors only simply need to notify the TGA under the CTN scheme. And most trials in Australia follow this scheme. So then the trial can start the day after, and the TGA will only acknowledge the notification. In terms of cost, the Research and Development Tax Incentive offers international companies generous incentives of up to 43.5% in the form of a refund or tax offset for eligible R&D activity conducted in Australia. So to demonstrate the cost effectiveness of early phase clinical trials, there was a study conducted by Frost and Sullivan that was asked to estimate the cost of these early phase, a phase 1 clinical trial, and it compared overall costs pre and post tax incentives. So the report showed that Australia is 28% cheaper than the US before tax incentives and about 60% cheaper after tax incentives for early phase clinical trials. So medical product manufacturing is also a key priority for Australia. So the federal and state governments are continually investing to strengthen Australia's medical product manufacturing sector. Initiatives and funding for the manufacturing include the $1.5 billion National Reconstruction Fund for medical products, and there are also many state-sponsored initiatives for building manufacturing capability. So Australia has also developed manufacturing infrastructure to support a diverse and innovative healthcare ecosystem. We have CSIRO's Advanced Biologics Manufacturing Facility, Westmead's Viral Vector Facility, the National Biologics Facility, as well as several CDMOs and CMOs operating across Australia to support research and clinical development. Additionally, with close proximity, strong ties, and a number of free trade agreements to high growth Asian markets, Australia is an ideal base for expansion. So just to summarise everything I've spoken today, so we offer international partnership opportunities across the life science value chain. Australia is ranked as a top tier destination for international clinical trials activity, with a well-established ecosystem being a major advantage to ensure a smooth transition from research to the clinic. You can leverage government funding and incentives to subsidise research and investment. We have a prominent reputation in research and quality healthcare across the Asia-Pacific region, and our proximity to these high-growth markets makes us an ideal base for expansion into Asia. Australia also offers an efficient testbed for early-stage adoption environment for novel and personalised treatments with pathways into global markets. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact either myself or I have a colleague, Oscar, who is based in Frankfurt, and we can always provide assistance. So we help companies around the world to identify and take up investment opportunities in Australia, as well as source Australian goods and services. So we can help provide insights on Australian capabilities, identify potential investment projects and strategic alliance partners. We help international companies set up here in Australia, provide advice on Australian government programs and approval processes, identify clinical trial partners and facilitate introductions, or we can provide ongoing advice for companies looking to establish manufacturing operations or local branches. So thank you very much, and I will stop sharing now.
Perfect. Thanks, Catherine, for highlighting what a strong market Australia is for our Austrian companies to invest into. I'll introduce our second speaker, who will discuss Australia's legal and regulatory environment, essential for a successful market entry. Alison Choi Flanagan has 25 years of corporate, commercial, and regulatory experience, specialising in advising clients in the health, aged care, disability, life science, and community sectors. Alison co-leads the Hall & Wilcox Health and Care Industry Group, as well as she's involved in many facets of Australia's healthcare space and has been listed in the Best Lawyers in Australia and the Financial Review for health and aged care and biotechnology every year since 2008. That's mighty impressive. Alison, I'll leave the floor to you now. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm just going to share my slides. Can you see the slides there? Yes, good. Okay. So my topic sort of was, an update on the regulatory landscape. There's a couple of things that I wanted to focus on. So we're very fortunate to act for a number of the health and medical research institutes that were on Catherine's slides. So when I looked them up, I thought, okay, we act for them. We act for public hospitals, private hospitals, For 9 years, I was the preferred legal provider for New South Wales Health on clinical trial agreements. So we act for the hospital and health sector, life science sector in Australia. But a big portion of our work that I do is help international companies enter into the Australian market, whether they want to enter into the Australian market by setting up a wholly owned subsidiary in Australia or a distribution agreement or some sort of joint venture, or they want to set up a clinical trial in Australia. So the sort of advice that we provide those clients include corporate, commercial, IP, privacy, health regulatory, and therapeutic goods regulatory. As Catherine says, in Australia, we broadly speaking have both the public and private sector, and the public health system is funded by the state and territory and also Commonwealth system. We have a private health insurance market as well, which people can opt to have private health insurance, and that gives them, I mean, if you're a resident, you have access to public hospitals, but sometimes there's a wait list. The private health insurance gives you your choice of medical practitioner and also a speedy access into the private health system. There's some services that are provided, it's funded by Medicare, for example, medical practitioner services, which aren't necessarily covered. What's covered by Medicare can't be covered by private health insurers, but private health insurers cover things like dental, which a lot of the Medicare doesn't cover unless it's a certain exception, optical, and some other, for example, plastic surgery, which is elective, would not be covered by Medicare, but may be covered by your private health insurance. We also have a pharmaceutical benefits scheme, which is government-funded pharmaceuticals. So quite often when we advise clients when they want to come into Australia, they want to get their product listed on the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods with the Therapeutic Goods Administration. They also want to apply for PBS approval, which allows their medicine to be funded through government subsidies. And then if they're a medical device company, they quite often want to get on the prosthesis list, and that allows, again, government funding. So there's both the registration and the reimbursement that we advise clients. Also, there's a private funding in the Australian healthcare system as well. For example, there's a motor vehicle accident, the insurer might pay for that. There's separate funding in Australia for aged care and disability. And health practitioners need to be registered under the Health Practitioner Regulation National Law. And as Catherine says, we're regulated under therapeutic goods legislation in relation to therapeutic goods. One thing that Australia is a bit different from other jurisdictions is that in Australia, you need an Australian resident sponsor for the either clinical trial or the therapeutic good. It's a little bit unusual. What's some of the recent developments? I've got 2 slides on this. Because Australia has a universal healthcare system, so it's funding free healthcare to its residents, obviously the costs are not sustainable in the long term if the cost continues to increase. So the Australian government has announced reforms to improve the affordability of healthcare, and that includes a reform activity in relation to the prosthesis list. And as Catherine said, during COVID-19, we saw a number of reforms where, for example, telemedicine can be reimbursed by the government through the Medicare system, and we saw fast tracking of TGA approvals, particularly in relation to vaccines. Some of the trends that I'm seeing in my practice is there's been a huge boom in Australia in relation to medicinal cannabis, and so we've been doing a lot of work in relation to that. And there's been a boom in vaping in Australia, and the government has really clamped down on that. So there's a lot of regulatory reforms in relation to medicinal and cannabis and vaping that we've been advising on. Another area that we're advising on, which is another recent development, is software as a medical device in Australia, particularly software which uses the AI. So we're seeing AI being used, for example, in diagnostic imaging, particularly in pathology, And there's some software products that, for example, uses AI in relation to medical records, which will indicate and give an alert if a patient suffers sepsis. So it gives them the clinicians an alert if that's going to happen. And also we've seen, particularly in aged care, they're using AI and CCTV. So the CCTV throughout the facility, if a resident were to fall, the cameras identifying that and notifying people, and also bladder control as well. So using the data, getting patterns of people's use of their bladder helps them anticipate when they might need help. So again, using the AI to make the patient journey better, mainly to help with diagnosis. What I advise those clients is that you need to ensure you've got your clinical decisions. Ultimately, AI is a tool. It's not the decision maker. The clinician should do it. Now, the last thing that we've been seeing a lot is, and it's partly because that friction between the cost of healthcare and the cost of private health insurance premiums and everything, we've been seeing quite a few disputes between the larger private health insurers and private and public hospitals in relation to reimbursement. So the Aussies in the audience would have seen announcements throughout the newspapers that some private health insurers were pulling out of hospitals because they weren't under contract, which meant that the consumer couldn't use those particular hospitals. Some of the things that we tell people if they want to come into Australia is that usually they come in, if it's a subsidiary, as a proprietary company. And just to be aware that if you're going to set up an Australian subsidiary, which is a proprietary company in Australia, you must have at least one director who is a resident in Australia. And also, if you're coming in, the Foreign Investment Review Board approval might be required. And that very much depends upon the value of the transaction and also the identity of the investor. So if the investor is coming from an overseas government, the Australian government might be more interested in relation to that. What I did want to talk about is they're going to look at FIRB to make it more stronger, faster, and more transparent. So FIRB itself is currently going through a reform review. What I did want to talk about, one of the major things that's happening at the moment, if you are looking to invest in the Australian market, is the merger reforms. So the merger reforms will come into effect from 1 January 2026. However, voluntary notification is available from 1 July 2025. So this is a new regime that's going to start next year, and it will require a notification of particular transactions. There's three major types of transactions which will require notification. This is all very new and fresh. One is an economy-wide monetary threshold, or a very large acquire threshold, acquiring a smaller Australian company, and there's a 3-year cumulative turnover threshold. So I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but I just wanted to tell you that this is one of the major reforms coming in for mergers and acquisitions, companies coming into Australia. So that's the thresholds for the monetary and the market concentration. So obviously, if you've got a large concentration in the market and you're going to increase that, the ACCC, which is the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, will need to know about that. And there's also high-risk mergers. So the Australian government may say they want to target approval for high-risk mergers, and that might be, and you might think, for example, it might be high risk if it's a particular large group of hospitals that might be interested to the government as to whether that's going to be taken over by a foreign interest. So that's really, again, as I said, if you're going to have a proprietary company, you must have at least one director ordinarily resident in Australia. There's some special rules for crowdsourcing, and a public company must have at least 3 directors, at least 2 must reside in Australia. So when you're setting up in Australia, just to be aware of that. I'm not going to go into that great detail about that. Setting up in Australia, you have to be aware also of our Competition and Consumer Act and the Australian Consumer Law, which regulates anti-competitive behaviour and also products that and claims made in relation to your products. So the fines could be quite hefty. So for a maximum penalty for engaging in misleading or deceptive conduct could be the greater of 50 million, the reasonably attributable benefit, or 30% of the corporation's adjusted annual turnover. And civil personal liability for directors may also apply. As Catherine says, we have protection for patents in Australia, and we are a member of a number of international treaties in relation to that. And we also have privacy laws. So for the private sector, it's mainly the Australian Privacy Act. So companies coming into Australia should be aware of privacy laws, particularly in relation to health and medical research. So I'm going to stop sharing there, and I think we're going to have questions at the end.
Perfect. Thank you, Alison, for that. And actually, as Alison mentioned, healthcare costs are always a big topic of discussions, particularly here in Australia. However, only today we heard the Labor government announce a $1.7 billion funding boost should it be re-elected in the federal elections that are coming up this year. So there's a lot of government funding and a lot of opportunity here in Australia. Before I introduce our third speaker, I'll just encourage everyone on our various platforms to use the Q&A functions that are available. Please ask your questions, introduce yourselves. We do have a couple of questions coming in that we'll have answered towards the end of the webinar. Our third speaker today is Vicky Abraham, Managing Director of Abraham OT Services, a community-based occupational therapy practice specializing in the latest computer-based and robotic therapies. Abraham OT Services is Australia's only reference centre for Austria's tire motion. Myself and my team have had the privilege to witness firsthand the impact Vicky and her team and the amazing work she does and the impact it has on her patients' lives. So, Vicky, I'll leave the floor to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke. I'll just share my slides. Okay. So thanks, Luke, and I want to thank Catherine and Alison. Unlike their presentations, I'm talking about a user from a user's perspective. So I have a partnership with Tyromotion, and I'm lucky, really lucky, to be a user of technology that is designed, tested and manufactured out of Austria, from Graz, Austria. Just a bit of background about me. I'm an occupational therapist, and I do now specialise in upper and lower limb rehab using technology, using robotics and computer-based devices. So how that all started in 2013, I was awarded a fellowship through the International Specialised Skills Institute in Australia. And I went overseas to research what devices were available and used readily in the market overseas that we didn't hear. How that started was a client of mine said, Vicky, there has to be more. So Australia, I have found, is a little bit behind in technology, but that has been rapidly changing. So in 2013, I went overseas and I met the Tyromotion family, who are amazing. And what their mission is that everybody should be able to achieve their maximum potential in life. And I wholeheartedly believe that. And that is what I've been trying to achieve in Australia. So what I found with rehabilitation, if I can get my slides to... Here we go, the challenges. So the challenges that we face is motivation of clients. Now, when you're retraining upper limb, traditionally clients have to do basic tasks like stacking blocks or squeezing pegs, and the motivation to do such mundane tasks is really, really difficult. As a therapist, we stand behind our clients and we push them and we get them to see that they're actually making gains, but you can't see the gains that they're making because of the type of activities that they were doing. We know that in order to retrain the brain and allow neuroplasticity to happen, you need intensity of movement, so intensity of repetitions. And as a therapist, I can't sit there and move my clients' fingers for hundreds of times in an hour, but robotics and technology can, which I'll show you. We also know that in order to be successful, we need consistency. And if our clients aren't motivated and they don't have activities that they find enjoyable, then there's not going to be any consistency in what they're doing or any homework at home. So then they can't progress further with what we're doing. And we need to be able to show our clients that they're progressing, and the progress that they're making. How can we show that to them when they're not physically making gains, but we can see that they are? So what tyrotherapy, so the therapy through tyromotion, means for patients. Chirotherapy allows patients to escape the monotony of everyday ordinary therapy. Their condition is stressful enough. So shouldn't their time spent in therapy be both fun and challenging, which is what I was trying to achieve here. So fun. Therapy is hard work. I don't know if any of you know someone who might have had a stroke or a spinal cord injury, and clients have to put most of their day into their rehab. But if they're not motivated and they're not having fun, how do they achieve their goals? We try to get our clients to be really determined. If they're having fun and they see progress, they're determined to move further ahead in their rehab. Success. That comes with determination. So if they can see that they're changing and their movement's increasing and they're able to do activities at home that they couldn't do before, their success is going to motivate them further to do more. We all have goals. So our clients need to have goals, and everyday small things like I want to cut up my food to I want to climb Mount Wellington in Tasmania. The goals doesn't matter how big or how small, they have every right. And what we try and do is increase our clients' quality of life. The results we're getting and their expressions on their faces when they achieve their next step in life is phenomenal. So we are changing their lives from I can't do it to I can and I will, and I just need some help with that. So as Luke said, in 2023, because of the relationship that I had with Tyre Motion, and I had by that stage been using their devices for over 10 years, we became the Australian Reference Centre, which is quite phenomenal and just a huge honour for me to have. But what I wanted to show you was Tyre Motion devices, just to give you a brief explanation of them, and then I'll show you some clients using them. So we have Armadeo, and Armadeo is the only finger robot available in the world. So for patients who have limited movement or no movement, we can turn it into a robot and Armadeo can do the movement for the client. And what we're doing is retraining the brain so that it can relearn how to make those fingers move. There's Diego, and Diego is an intelligent weight relief device that once you remove the weight and the client then has the opportunity to move their arms freer because removing the weight allows that. So we can work on the shoulder or the elbow using Armadeo with one arm or both together. The great thing about Diego is you can interact with the device, so play games, or you can turn the client around and complete functional activities still with the weight relief on. We have Miro, and Miro is a sensor-based surface that enables task-orientated rehabilitation with real objects. So there's a key, there's a cup, there's a joystick, and it really helps to train the patient's cognitive abilities as well as their physical abilities. We have Pablo, and Pablo enhances classical therapy exercises using various accessories. So there are sensors, there's a ball and there's a board, and you can work on the wrist, the elbow, and the sensors can go anywhere on the body so that you can work on movement anywhere. There's also Timo, and Timo fits into the upper and lower extremities because you can push on it, you can sit on it, you can stand on it. It works on balance training and postural control, and we all know without your core, the upper limb and lower limb don't work very well. So lower limb, we have Timo, and then we have Amigo, which is a multifunctional chair which enables therapy in a sitting, standing or lying position. So that chair can change in height. The backrest can be lowered back so that it's in a reclined position and the client can lie back with it, or sit without a backrest so they're using their core more. And finally, the last device that Tyre Motion has released is Lexo, which is an end effector gait trainer. So for clients that are relearning how to walk or haven't walked in years, we can pop them on there and they can relearn that movement. So I would like to just show you this video. Hopefully it will work. This client of mine, and I might just replay the video a few times because it's only short, he hasn't walked in many, many years. So when he has physio, he has 4 therapists while he's being held in a hoist that move his legs. But as you can see on Lexo, I can transfer him on there by myself, and Lexo assists him with that walking motion. So since using Lexo, he's now doing hydrotherapy in a pool and he's actually taking steps in a pool, which is huge for him. The next video. So this client is using Armadeo. Now she has quite high function in her hand after her stroke. But what she's doing is her brain's figuring out which fingers she has to move in order to get that chicken to move around the screen and eat the worms. Now, we might think that's a basic game, but for someone who has limited movement, when they can engage in an activity like a computer game as opposed to having to pick up a block on a table, it's very engaging. The graphics is fun. Everyone smiles, and then they get a score of how many worms that they have eaten. So the next time they know if they've progressed further. Each game has 10 different levels, so we can make it harder or easier depending on what we're trying to achieve. Well, I will just, there we go. This one is Diego. So again, the client's arms are supported. The weight of her arms is being held by Diego, and she's controlling the green squiggly thing, and she has to move around the screen to touch the green circles, not the red ones. Again, it might look basic to us, but it is enjoyable and engaging. Now, when we use tyro motion devices, the options are endless. It's really limited by as a therapist, our imagination. So again, our client has the Pablo sensors on her wrists, and she is driving. The game is highway, so she has to move the car left and right so she doesn't hit the other cars. We were lucky enough that one of our other clients who was a mechanic saw us doing this with a client with a pretend steering wheel, and he went to his cars, pulled out a steering, I can't even think what it's called, but the steering part of the car, and set it up for us so that we can do this with our clients, and they have so much fun. So again, all these videos are just to show that therapy should not be boring, and Tyro Motion is out there developing these devices. There are other places in the world, but with my research, I found that Tyro Motion had what I was looking for. The other great benefit of Tyro Motion is that there is a software that you can get reports from, and it graphs changes. So all the devices have various assessments that we can do with our clients. So we do it at the start, in the middle, at the end, when we have to write funding reports, and we can put in a graph that shows all their changes, which for funding body, it's exactly what they want to see. So what I wanted to highlight is, as a therapist, we are trying to make our clients' worlds better and get them to set goals that they never thought they'd be able to meet, whether it's things that they were doing in the past prior to their accident or incident, or activities that they never thought they'd do before. So just a few examples of how amazing our clients are. With our support, this client learned how to fly this plane, so he is now a pilot. This cheeky client never thought he'd be able to move his left hand again. So that is his affected hand that he is giving you the peace signal with. And when we first met him, he had very limited movement, and now he has full movement, full function of his left arm, which is fantastic. Another client who is not functional with his right arm yet, but because of his confidence increasing with his sessions with us, he can do some activities with his right hand, but he is now confident enough to go back to shooting, and he's trying to investigate how he could get into the next Paralympics in shooting. This client was on a lot of my videos. Her goal was to climb Mount Wellington, which was a 14-kilometre walk up a mountain, and she did that 2 or 3 years ago. She has sessions on most of the Tyro Motion devices, including Lexo, even though she does walk, but it does assist her confidence, her strength, and her endurance. And last year, I was her support person, and we climbed Mount Kosciuszko in New South Wales. It was a twilight moonwalk, so we left at 3 a.m. and saw the sunrise, which was phenomenal, and she's just amazing. And if it wasn't for Tyro Motion devices, she wouldn't be where she is today. Again, just another client who's now living life because of what therapy he is receiving. So I guess what I want to push to all of you, and depending on what your companies are or where you fit into the health industry, there is a huge future of technologies in Australia. We really need to embrace and advocate for innovation in Australia, whether it's in rehab or medical, it's really important that Australia embraces everything that the rest of the world and Austria has to offer for us to use here. We need to encourage facilities to adopt robotic systems or other systems in the health industry. I think it's really important that we promote engagement, participation, and also community support for all our clients and all the people in Australia. And in terms of rehabilitation, we need to ensure that it is fun, and technology really does do that. There's no reason why anyone in a wheelchair can't embrace life and live it how the rest of us want to. An amazing client of mine, this is a self-portrait. She is a photographer, and this is now how she feels with life. So again, I want to thank you. I think it's really important. Tyromotion is really setting the scene here in Australia. We were the first private clinic to have robotic devices. There are more clinics around Australia that now are using Tyromotion, and some hospitals. And I really urge you to find your partners and bring your businesses here. So thank you, Luke.
Perfect. Thank you, Vicky. And as you can tell, the work Vicky does and her partnership with Tyromotion is changing people's lives. And it's great to see how revolutionary some of our Austrian technology really is to support people in their rehabilitation journeys. We have had some questions come in, and I'm mindful of the time that we've only got a couple of minutes left. So I might ask our speakers just to turn on their cameras again, because there's a couple of questions for all of you. Our first question is directed at Catherine, and the question is: are there any government incentives or grants available for foreign healthcare businesses in Australia? What role do trade agreements between the EU and Australia play in business opportunities? As we're all aware that Australia and the European Union is working towards a free trade agreement, and hopefully negotiations will be restarted soon. So hopefully that'll also be another push in the right direction as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, Luke. In terms of specific grants, without knowing what you're particularly looking at, it is hard to answer. I did reference a couple of the grants that are currently available, whether it's clinical trials, manufacturing, or medical research. There is grants across that spectrum. And then, as I mentioned, most companies, if you're within therapeutics, look for PBS listing. If you're in the medical device space, maybe that's prosthesis listing. So it just kind of depends what funding. And then, as Luke mentioned, Australia is currently negotiating with the European for a free trade agreement. So we're still kind of waiting to see how that pans out. But hopefully that answers your question. But if you've got more specifics, I'm happy for you to reach out.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Catherine. And maybe again for Catherine, and maybe also Alison's experience when working with European companies. One question is: are there any fast-track approval pathways for the European Union certified medical products in Australia?
So I can say that the Australian TGA does recognise EU CE certification, so that helps a lot. So if you've already got CE certification in Europe, you can use that for the manufacturing certification in Australia.
Perfect. And another question that's again related to regulatory challenges: what common regulatory challenges do foreign companies face when entering the Australian healthcare industry? And one of the company goes, is cost and processing time an issue, particularly with TGA approvals?
Well, it really depends on the product, because and the class of products. So that can, for medical devices, the classes as to how long it would take to process. But with the right planning, it's totally doable. And, the TGA, we assist clients to apply for registration on the TGA all the time. It's not going to be in 24 hours or anything like that. It does take a while, but with the right planning, it's totally doable. I think a lot of, you either, what we normally see is either a distribution agreement with an existing Australian company first, so that they can test out the market. And then after that, then they might want to incorporate an Australian subsidiary and operate within the Australian market. as well. So, I mean, I think that I really liked Vicky's presentation because that can show how successful it can be with partnering with the right Australian partner and entering the market. I've seen some, I also act in disputes. So, I've seen some bad stories as well. So it's really about what I can say is doing the proper due diligence when you come in, making sure that you do due diligence with your Australian partner and get the proper advisors and consultants to help you, Austrade to help you, legal, accounting, getting the proper advice coming in. But we're excited. Our doors are open. We're very excited. I mean, I'm very excited about Vicky's presentation as well because we can see that having the technology in Australia helps the Australian population to access this technology. So for us, it's a win-win.
Perfect. Catherine, maybe it's just a follow-up question from before, and that's just come through now. Because from your experience with other international markets, how would an FTA affect market entry?
It depends on the specific market. My focus is primarily Europe, the Middle East. We've recently had the UK FTA come into force, and I can't say I've experienced any regulatory benefits, but we've had a lot of benefits in terms of migration and skilled workforce. And with companies setting up, often they like to bring people in to help kind of guide and lead the way. So I'd say on the workforce kind of side, there's been an innovation. I'd say that's where I've seen the most benefits.
Okay, thanks for that. A question for Vicky. How important is having a local partner or a distribution partner when entering the Australian market? Did you have any feedback from Tyro Motion when you first started partnering with them?
Yeah, so I guess it's a little bit different for me because I'm a user. There is also a distributor of Tyro Motion products in Australia. So it's hugely important in that sense, especially when the time zone's so different. So if we have an issue with one of our devices, it's good to have someone local that can come and try and resolve it if we can't get through to Tyro Motion. But I've had only great things with Tyro Motion and their support's been fantastic. But I would say having a local partner is really important because of the time difference.
Perfect. And I think we have time for one last question. I've seen one that's come in, and maybe this is a question I might ask to all of you. And this is from Manuela, if we have a product that does not classify as a medical, if we have a product that's not classified as a medical product in the EU, does Australia reevaluate that, or does it also see as a non-medical product? So maybe Alison, more for you.
We would need to have a look at the product and work out what the regulatory framework for it is for Australia. So just because of this, it would need to be assessed for Australia. But what I'm saying is that we do quite often have very similar arrangements, with the European Union and America, but it is different. So yes, we need to actually look at the product and see whether it's a medical device, whether it needs to be registered on the ERTG. Or if it's, it's a medicine, if it's complementary, whether it has to be registered on the ARTG or not.
Okay. And then maybe Catherine, from your side, is there, and this is a question that we often get asked, and probably for many Austrian companies, obviously Australia and its border security and its import and export regulations is quite strict. If something is not allowed in Europe, or is not classified in Europe, does that make it another challenge when entering here in the Australian market?
Again, that's a difficult question. I've had several issues with the importing particular biologic products. I'd say biologic products is probably where we're most sensitive in terms of working. But we've got the Department of DAF that I've worked quite closely with in the past. So I'd say biologics and importing that is probably where we're most sensitive around. But without knowing any specifics, it's hard to provide any advice.
Perfect. And maybe Vicky can finish it off here. Had someone as the user of European products, did you find any challenges when it came to the medical products that you use?
No, I found everything successful. I honestly haven't had many concerns with the devices. The way that they interact with the clients have been fantastic in terms of getting them here. I mean, I guess that depends on manufacturing, but we are far away. So having the option of air or sea transport's been great, depending on how quickly we need the device. But look, the partnership, it's been going over for 10 years and it's been fantastic. And I am going to stick with Tire Motion until the end. So I can't speak any highly of them or my experience with Austrian companies. Yeah.
Perfect. On that note, we might actually finish up here since it's just on time. Firstly, I want to thank all of our panelists today, Catherine, Alison, and Vicky, for your presentations and your insights. It's greatly appreciated. We often get questions asking us about updates on the Australian market and what is happening. Therefore, thank you very much for joining us today. As the Austrian Trade Commission, we are here to service our Austrian companies, but as well put Australia and Austria, bring Australia and Austria closer together. So if there's anything that we can do for both sides in connecting our two great countries, please don't feel free to reach out to us. Myself and Sector Manager Ledi Federico, who many of you who have communicated with us in the past regarding the healthcare and the medical sector, we will be attending this the big Australian healthcare festivals which are taking place. That includes the Australian Healthcare Week, which is taking place in March, and the Digital Healthcare Festival, which is taking place in May. So there's anything that we can do for our Austrian companies or connecting Australia and Austria together at these events, please feel free to let us know. On that note, this webinar will be available online in coming days. And if you have any questions for any of our speakers today, I'm sure they'll be more than happy. We're happy to facilitate an introduction for any of your questions. So thank you everyone for joining, and have a great evening for those in Australia and a great day ahead for those in Europe. Thank you very much.